Tim Pool bristles at the idea that his audience is primarily right-wing. This makes sense, seeing as Tim Pool's entire shtick relies on him maintaining the illusion that he remains at the center, at the common-sense focal point of all ideology. And yet, despite this facade being so shoddily constructed, Tim Pool maintains it in the face of all opposition. This can be seen in his most recent podcast with Emma Vigeland, where she confronted him on this exact point.
Why do you think this was a neo-Nazi. Why do you think your content appeals to neo-Nazis?
Are you kidding me right now?
No, I'm just wondering why you think that.
I'm gonna do something I don't normally do, but that was an egregious over-the-line statement where I don't know if you're intentionally trying to just generate clips that are nonsensical or you're just really that stupid.
Oh, man.
The idea that because a Nazi watched your show appeals to Nazis is like, look, if you want to have a real conversation, we have a real conversation.
So, our research question for today is precisely this. How many Nazis watch Tim Pool? Moreover, what percentage of Tim Pool fans like to watch Nazis? In order to answer this question, I decided to measure commenter overlap over the past 6 months between Tim Pool and other political channels. I created 4 categories of political YouTube channels: socialist, partisan left, partisan right, and white identitarian. I picked categories spanning the political spectrum so that we can compare at the end, seeing which categories Tim Pool is most likely to overlap with. Each category had 6 YouTubers. The socialist category included Christo Evalis, Hasanabi, Vosh, The Surf Times, Second Thought, and The Humanist Report. The partisan left category included Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, TYT, David Pakman, Brian Taylor Cohen, The Majority Report, and Beau of the Fifth Column. The partisan right category included Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Steven Crowder, Liberal Hivemind, Michael Knowles, and Zeducation. And lastly, the white identitarian category included Black Pigeon Speaks, Survive the Jive, Lauren Southern, Keith Woods, Brittany Sellner, and What If Altist. For each content creator, I picked 2 videos at random for every month of the past 6 months, January to June. After selecting these videos, I used a username scraper to get all of the commenters on each video. Once all usernames had been scraped, I combined all of them into a large list for every category. I applied this exact same methodology to Tim Pool's 3 channels: Tim Pool, Timcast IRL, and Timcast. Once this was done, I compared the lists to see how many of the names overlapped. All of my hard work left me with this table. This table may seem a bit confusing, but you can think of it like this. It shows the probability, expressed as a percentage, that if you left a comment on the channel in the row, that you also left a comment on the channel in the column. For example, if we go to the row labeled partisan left, we can see that there was a 2% chance that somebody who left a comment on partisan left videos also left a comment on Timcast videos. If we want to get a sense of how right-wing Tim Pool's audience is, then, we can compare his right-wing commenter overlap with his left-wing commenter overlap, just to get a sense. So, what do these results show? Well, if we look at the first row, we can see that if you left a comment on a Tim Pool video, there was a 21.18% chance that you also left a comment on a partisan right video. The next highest likelihood was white identitarian, with 6.79%. Following this are partisan left with 6.09% and socialist with 2.64%. These results are pretty one-sided, as I expected. You may even notice that Tim Pool viewers were slightly more likely to comment on white identitarian videos than they were to comment on partisan left videos. In other words, they were more likely to comment on the furthest right YouTubers than they were on even the normal leftist YouTubers. This already doesn't bode well, but it's even worse for Tim Pool than this makes it seem. Not only are these percentages very similar, but the partisan left category has almost 3 times as many unique commenters as the white identitarian category. The partisan left category was way more likely to find an overlapping username just by sheer numbers. We can solve this by going the other direction. Given that you left a comment on one of these political strata, what was your likelihood of leaving a comment on a Tim Pool video? As we can see, 11.12% of white identitarian commenters also left comments on Tim Pool videos. This compares to 8.05% of partisan right commenters, 3.57% of partisan left commenters, and 4.01% of socialist commenters. I think this already paints a pretty clear picture, but I want to go even further. If you look on the table, you can see that white identitarian commenters had a 13.54% chance of also having left a comment on a partisan right YouTuber. This is higher than the 11.12% chance that they commented on a Tim Pool video. But what happens if we break it down into the 6 individual right-wing YouTubers? As such, I prepared another table to see just that. As you can see in the first column, Tim Pool commenters were the most likely out of any of the listed YouTubers to also have left a comment on white identitarian, i.e. Nazi videos. Moreover, as the second column shows, Timcast and Tim Pool were more popular among white identitarian commenters than any of the other YouTubers. The only exception to this trend was Timcast IRL commenters, and that's likely because there weren't as many unique commenters on Timcast IRL videos as there were on Timcast and Tim Pool videos. And, on that note, you can see that the Timcast and Tim Pool channels had fewer unique commenters than Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh, and yet still, Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh managed to have lower percentages of white identitarian commenters. So, even when compared to right-wing YouTubers, Tim Pool has a significantly larger audience overlap. Now, I did identify one potential flaw in this methodology. I will concede that there's a varying level of extremity, or at least overtness, when it comes to these different white identitarian YouTubers. I wanted to see if there were any differences in how likely it was for a commenter on one of these white identitarian YouTubers to also comment on a Tim Pool video. I would say that the less overt white identitarian YouTubers are Lauren Southern, What If Altist, and Survive the Jive. On the other hand, Black Pigeon Speaks, Keith Woods, and Brittany Sellner are much more overt in their leanings. As a result, I created this final table. So, were the most extreme YouTubers less likely to leave comments on Tim Pool videos? Absolutely not. As you can see, Black Pigeon Speaks commenters and Brittany Sellner commenters were the most likely to have also left a comment on a Tim Pool video. The only less overt white nationalist YouTuber who even comes close is Lauren Southern with 15.05%. The other two less overt white nationalist YouTubers, What If Altist and Survive the Jive, were the lowest with 7.99% and 7.17% respectively. In other words, even if you look at the most extreme of the extreme, you can see that there's a healthy amount of overlap with Tim Pool's audience, or, at the very least, that these commenters like to also comment on Tim Pool videos. Despite all of his protesting against it, Tim Pool's audience is verifiably more right-wing than it is left-wing. Not only that, but the furthest right commenters are more likely to comment on Tim Pool videos than they are to comment on the videos of YouTubers who are ostensibly to the right of Tim Pool. So, next time Tim Pool tries to pull this maneuver, just remember that he is empirically incorrect.